All right, let's get right into it. We left off in part 2 where I was asking the question of, does he not believe that Christ founded a church? And not just, with these denominations, right? So he was talking about he's just a Christian and he's not part of any denomination. Well, okay, it's easy. Well, it's easy to say you're not part of a denomination, you're just Christian. But that has nothing to do with whether or not there is a church or not. Because if the answer is yes, Christ founded a church, then you need to be part of that church. And then it negates the idea of denominationalism. If you want to be Christian, you're part of that church that Christ himself founded. Where is it? Where is it? How do I join it? What does it teach? Those are the questions. Let's get right into it.
What were you saying? Do you not think that Jesus wanted to establish a church?
He did.
Like a church, or like whatever the church is.
The church of God.
Whether it's the Pentecostal church, what you call it, whatever. But he established a church, right? So I think that's the challenge for a modern day person who says, well, I'm Christian, but I'm not tied to any one denomination. But Jesus did seem to want to start a church. He had apostles. He had 12 of them, and one betrayed him, and so they replaced the other one with Matthias, right? They cast lots, so they replaced the leadership with new leadership, and so that gives us a pattern, right? And he talks about bishops and deacons and presbyteros, priests, right? So what churches have priests, bishops, and deacons, right? I mean, there's lots of them, but not all of them, right? And so,
but I mean, that's even Old Testament stuff too.
Well, those aren't Old Testament. Those are New Testament.
But I mean, okay, so the church is. There's always been a church, Israel was the church. They were the gathering, the people's gathering.
But they were the Pharisees,
Well,
they weren't
the Pharisees were just in there, but even before the Pharisees, in Egypt, I mean, when they came out of Egypt and Moses and all that, every lot of them was appointed. When they built that temple, so I love reading about this. How every one of them had a gift. God had anointed everybody with some kind of gift, to fashion, to whatever they were going to do in order to serve.
They had a vocation.
Right. And he's doing the same thing today. He still gives, his appointed pastors, apostles. I don't know about apostles these days, but bishops, deacons. Evangelists, gifts of healing. So I mean, there's some kind of way for each one of us to serve. And
well, what do priests do?
Well, we're all priests. A Christian is a priest.
What do priests do?
They serve in the temple.
But what do they actually do? What does a priest do that makes them a priest? Because not everybody can be a priest, right? Remember, Aaron was a priest in the Old Covenant, right? Other people tried to offer sacrifice and they couldn't do it. God wouldn't. Because they were ordained as priests.
Right.
Not anybody can just do it. So what do priests do? In the Old Testament,
you serve. That's just basically serving. You go out and you minister. You pray for people that need prayer. What did he say? He said, "Bear ye one another's burdens," and so fulfill the law of Christ. But Peter's the one that said that we're all in a what is it? A priesthood. It's what's the word he used? A peculiar priesthood.
Yeah, there's a priesthood that we all share in.
Now in the new covenant, anybody who enters in is considered a priest. That's because
is that how it is?
We're part of the stone. You know what I mean? Like we're part of that. The temple.
But is that how it's used in the New Testament?
I don't.
Because if we're all priests, then why were there certain groups called priests?
In the Old Testament?
In the New Testament. Presbyteros is priest.
I don't know. I don't really look into that. I know what you're talking about, but I don't.
So there is clearly different kinds of priests, a different sense of priest, right? Because if you look in Acts, in the Gospel, it talks about in the epistles of Paul, it talks about the bishop being the husband of one wife, something like that, right? And then there's the presbyteros. There's the presbyteros that support the bishop. That's priest. That's the word. That's the Greek word that means priest. So if all Christians are priests, then that doesn't make sense, right? So there has to be two senses of priest. A sense that we're all priests because we're baptized Christians, right? If you are a baptized Christian. And then there is a different sense of priestly leadership in the new covenant that supports the bishop. What does the bishop do? He's a governor of some sort in the church.
He's the overseer.
He's an overseer, right? So what I was getting at earlier is, if you look at every single priest figure in the old covenant, they all offered sacrifice. Everyone serves to some degree or another, but priests offer sacrifice, right? Abraham was going to offer his son instead, right? Abraham was going to offer Isaac. Instead, he offered the unblemished lamb that was caught in the thicket, right? So God provided the sacrifice. Noah, right after he got out of the ark, what did he do first? He offered sacrifice and thanksgiving. Melchizedek, what did he offer? He offered bread and wine in the old covenant, right? Every single one of them offered that were priests in the old covenant offered sacrifice.
But what is our sacrifice now, though? Our sacrifice
that will get into 3 more hours of theology.
Of Thanksgiving. That's what it says.
I remember now. Koinonia is Thanksgiving. I misunderstood. Metanoia. Koinonia is Paul says, the bread that we break, is it not a koinonia? Right, in 1 Corinthians, he said, is it not a koinonia in the body and blood of Christ? That's the sacrifice. That's my theology. The sacrifice of the new covenant is the body and blood of Christ that died on the cross for our sins. That's an eternal sacrifice. That is, right? That's the reason why we're saved, is the body and blood of Christ dying on the cross, the flesh of Christ dying on the cross in place of us. He is the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. Amen. Just like Isaac was supposed to be, right? It's a shadow, right? It's the son. It's his only son, Abraham's only son. Instead, because Isaac cannot die for the sins of man, he could only die for his own sins. So the lamb was just a ram. The ram was just a substitute sacrifice, just like Jesus is the substitute sacrifice for us, right? So if your question is, what is the sacrifice of the new covenant? It's Christ on the cross. But what did the priest do?
The sacrifice that we offer is things. So there's I think it's in the Psalms that like talks about offer the sacrifice of praise, offer the sacrifice of thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So the sacrifice has been made, right? Right. They were looking forward. We look back, right? We look back to the whereas the children were looking forward. They were looking to what was coming.
The children? What children?
The children of Israel.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah, they were looking, like David, he knew that his deliverer was coming. Sure. But they were looking forward to. Now we look back to it.
Right.
And
you look back to the cross.
We look back to the cross. I love how Jesus says something like, he tells Thomas, "Blessed are you because you've seen." He said, "You believe because you've seen, but blessed are those who believe and have not seen." And Peter talks about how we love him, that we haven't seen him, talking about for the people, like you haven't seen him, but yet you love him, and have that joy unspeakable.
Now you say we look back to the cross. Do you not believe the cross is still now?
No, the cross is
the sacrifice.
The cross
of Christ
is down. And when he rose, so he went in, he was buried.
Sure.
And then the tomb was empty. So if I look back to the cross and think, okay, he did what he did when he died for me. Sure. And if he wouldn't have died for us, then there was no sacrifice, right? If he wouldn't have risen, it wasn't for righteousness. Right. So that in righteousness, because of believing on that, is imputed onto us, right? So when I say I look back to the cross, it's like we look back in time, we see what happened. They only wondered, you know what I mean? Just like the angels wonder, what is this thing, this grace, this soteria, whereas like we always have that to look back at, but we look at resurrection. I think we kind of look more to.
He uses the word soteria. I've never heard it used just kind of by itself. I'm thinking that's the same word, soteriology, the study of how to get to heaven. I think that's what he's alluding to. Anyway, I just want to throw that in there.
The resurrection.
Oh, I understand. Yeah, I get
it's not that the death is important, but it's, if we're going to preach Christ's death, we need to make sure that we preach his resurrection as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
right. Even Paul says that. I preach Christ crucified.
Right.
Did he not say that?
Paul's risen. He'll say that, but he is risen. You know what I mean?
That's true. It's not either or. It's both.
Right.
I agree with you.
Right. So we, it's like we're with him rising, we can rise anyway.
Sure.
We die. Paul said, "I die daily."
Right.
Jesus denied himself. He, like he literally just he gave himself. He gave himself as a ransom for many.
Yeah.
And
well, that's a good point. Paul dying daily. You said earlier about sacrifice. What do we? I don't desire sacrifice. I mercy.
Mercy, not
right?
sacrifice. Yeah.
But dying every day, that is a sacrifice. I mean, it's not easy being Christian, right?
No, it's not a walk.
It's easier to do the clubbing and the other things that you talked about.
Strive to enter in at the end of the
It's tough. Yeah, the narrow gate is narrow.
He said, strive to enter in. For many will seek to enter and not be able to. Because a lot of people they're nominal Christians. They'll say, I'm a Christian, but they still do the same. They still live the same way they lived before. They don't believe in crucifying the flesh. They want to bear the name, but they don't want to. Hey, well, it's been nice talking to you. We got to get going, man.
Yeah.
What's your name again?
Yeah, Lawrence. What's your name?
David.
Yeah,
nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. You gonna be here all the time?
No,
I'd like to have to continue this conversation, but again, I know it's getting cold.
Yeah, no, we're well, last time we were down over there across the street from the bars. But today we were just wanted to come over here and, probably end up in Riverside or Fontana next time.
Well, maybe this was just meant for this one time.
Yeah, amen.
But one thing I want to say before you leave, in the book of Revelation, it talks about Christ sitting on the right hand of God, offering sacrifice. This is already him in heaven, right? He's already resurrected. So the question is, what is he offering that is appeasing the wrath of God in the book of Revelation?
Well, it says in Hebrews that he lives ever to make intercession for us.
Right. He's interceding for us.
And when he died, he did the same thing.
Right.
He said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." Right.
Yeah. He's showing He's showing his love for the Christian people by dying on the cross, and he's constantly showing that cross to the Father to appease his wrath. The Father was going to destroy us, just like he destroyed the whole world for the flood, right? And if it wasn't for the sacrifice of Christ on the cross. So yeah, resurrection is very much important, for sure. But the cross is the means of our salvation. They're both. The resurrection is not the means of our salvation. It's the cross. The resurrection is part of that deal, but we still need to keep that in there. And it makes sense with the daily sacrifice we're talking about.
We acknowledge that death.
Yeah.
He suffered for us, Suffered once for sins,
Well, God bless you.
Yeah, God bless you.
God bless what you're doing.
Thank you.
If I was driving by, I was like, you know what? I'm going to turn around and have a conversation.
That's awesome.
Yeah, because I don't get to do this very often.
Yeah.
All right, well, there you have it. It was almost an hour invested, and I never mentioned the word Catholic. Okay, you might have different thoughts about why not, why shouldn't I have mentioned that? I felt like, or at least that's kind of my mode of I think that sometimes when you say certain words, if you get a sense that they're sensitive to a certain background, it closes off the conversation, right? Or it turns it into a different kind of conversation if you introduce certain pieces of information. So I wouldn't want, if I would have mentioned Catholicism or Catholic right at the get-go, it's going to be a different conversation. Why do you pray to saints? Why do you pray to Mary? Work salvation, Priest is an intercessor. Why is he a go-between when there's only one mediator between God and man? Saints, did I mention saints already? Lighting candles, idolatry. I mean, you name it. It could be that kind of conversation. And I don't want to have that kind of conversation. I want to have a conversation about his faith and whether or not that faith is founded upon a long tradition, a long history of Christianity developing and spreading 2,000 years all around the world. Is that flavor of faith the same faith of the fathers of the church, the early church fathers, first, second, third, fourth century? What did their Christianity look like? What does your Christianity look like today? And what kind of Christianity, what flavor of Christianity looks the closest to or in continuity with those earliest churches, those earliest liturgies, those earliest ways of worship and practice and belief and all that stuff? Those are important questions. You can't just kind of assume you're in the 20th century, 21st century now. You're just like, we're just Christians. We're just doing what the Bible says. I bought the Bible at Barnes and Noble. I'm just doing what it says here and not connecting it with the fact that it was in the context of first century, Christianity that came out of Judaism. And, Judaism was a very liturgical religion. And then, the kind of Christianity that's popular today is rock music and Bible preaching and sermonizing and things like that, and not recognizing the earliest Christian churches had liturgical prayers, liturgical ceremonials. Those were the early Christians, whether you like it or not. And so you have to reckon that. We have to reckon with that truth and figure out whether you're in the right place or not. So that's it. God bless you all. Hope you enjoyed this 3-part series. Until next time.